Hello, my name is Fradi Salman Mijage from Edukea Tanzania. I'm a history teacher of ordinary level. So welcome to proceed with the first topic of Form 4, which is crisis in the capitalist system. On the last session, we ended on the definition of Second World War as the third world crisis which affected the world. So today we are going to see the causes of Second World War. The causes of the Second World War were categorized into two categories, namely long-term causes and immediate causes. It means that the causes of Second World War were categorized into two, which include long-term cause and the immediate causes. So let us start with the immediate causes. The first one was Japanese attack on Manchuria in 1931. It means that the outbreak of Second World War was contributed by the Japanese attack on Manchuria in 1931, whereby Japan invaded or attacked the part of China in 1931 and created the new state which was known or named by Manchukuo. So the Japanese government wanted to expand herself in China and to create the new state as a colony, so that she can increase the production of various raw materials which can be used in feeding the industries in Japan. So that action which done by the Japanese to attack Manchuria and China, that declared or led to the anger to the another side, or the allied power to declare the war. So in that situation led to the League of Nations to silence on that action, and as time went on, when it reached on 1933, Japan was left from the League of Nations, and that when it reached on 1939, that led to the occurrence of the Second World War. But another immediate cause was Ethiopia crisis in 1935. It means that this was the crisis when Italy under Benito Mussolini was invaded Ethiopia, and Ethiopia was under the European country which was on the allied power. So this action was angered the League of Nations, which was agreed that no any European nation must interfere the other European nations' spheres of influence. So the Italy under Benito Mussolini was broken the rules or agreements which were placed during the Peace Versailles Treaty and under the League of Nations, so led to the breaking of the agreement, and that pronounced the outbreak of the Second World War, when Italy came into crisis with Ethiopia, and that's why in 1939 the Second World War was occurred. And the last immediate cause was Hitler's aggressive policies. It means that the Adolf Hitler as the dictator in Germany under the Nazi Party come up with aggressive policies, and that leader or that dictator was against the Peace Versailles Treaty, the policies which were agreed during that treaty or that conference, that suspected that Germany was the main causative of the First World War, so had to pay the war reparation and to lose our colonies. So that's agreement, so that policies which were agreed during the Versailles Peace Treaty led to the Adolf Hitler to expand himself and develop various troops which can help Germany to invade other nations, and as the result led to the immediate or to the occurrence of the Second World War. After looking at the immediate cause of Second World War, let us look on the long-term causes of the Second World War. The first one was the impact of Versailles Peace Treaty on Germany. It means that the Peace Versailles Treaty or the Versailles Peace Treaty on Germany was agreed that Germany was suspected or was taken as the main causative of the First World War. So Germany was to be punished with allies. So Germany, Italy and Japan were to be punished because were the main causative of the First World War. So you can see that Germany was told that no armament or should reduce the manufacturing of weapons or military weapons, and Germany should lose our colonies as well as to pay the war reparation, because she was considered as the causative of the First World War. So due to that agreements which were resulted during the Versailles Peace Treaty led Germany to ignore those agreements, and led to the invasion of other nations, as the result led to the outbreak of the Second World War. But the second long-term cause was the economic depression during the interwar period. It means that there was economic depression which affected the European nations and other parts of the world. So the leaders in respective countries were made to come up and see how they will curb the situation or the economic crisis which have been affected their countries. So that's why various leaders like Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini come into power with using the force, so dictatorial force, that used to take the power, and decided to invade the neighboring countries or European countries and outside the Europe countries in order to expand their territories with the aim of increasing the production and getting the colonies which will assist them to revamp the economies which have been affected by the Great Economic Depression of 1929 to 1933. So you can see that the economic depression during the interwar period led to the occurrence of the Second World War. But the third one was the formation of military alliance. It means that the European countries were failed in formation or forming of military alliance. For example, the Axis power, which included Germany, Italy, and Japan, was the military alliance which was against the Allied power, which included Britain, USA, France, and the USSR or Russia. So those the formation of military alliances were competing on defending the military member when they are attacked or invaded by the enemy military alliance. So the formation of those military alliance led to the occurrence of the Second World War, when after Germany invaded Poland and Czechoslovakia. Another was the rise of Nazism and Fascism. It means that the rise of these ideologies or policies under Adolf Hitler with the Nazi Party and the Fascism under Benito Mussolini in Italy led to the occurrence of the Second World War, because those dictators come up with aggressive policies which could threaten to the world peace and the stability, and that's why those military alliances or other enmity nations towards the German and the Italy led to declare of the war in order to go against with the Nazism and the fascism under Adolf Hitler and the Benito Mussolini respectively. Another long-term cause was the failure of League of Nations to defend world peace. The League of Nations was formed in 1919 as a result of the First World War. It means that after the First World War there was the formation of League of Nations, which was there to promote and to maintain the world peace and security, in order to overcome and to observe there were no occurrence, or there should be no occurrence of another world war. And that League of Nations was failed to maintain world peace, and they remain as the toothless dog as Japanese attacked China on the part of Manchuria in 1931, but Italy was invaded Ethiopia in 1935, as well as Germany was invaded Poland and Czechoslovakia, but the League of Nations was silent and nothing was taken as the action towards the dictators. So that led to the occurrence of Second World War. But another was Hitler's aggressive policies. Hitler's aggressive policies contributed to the occurrence of the Second World War, whereby the Adolf Hitler was come up with the expansionism policies, whereby he encouraged his fellow dictators to invade various nations in Europe and in Africa as well as Asia, in order to expand their spheres of influence, in order to increase and build the economy of their country. So in that way, that led to the occurrence of the Second World War, because those dictators were interfering the economic interest of their enemy or of the other European countries, which was against with the agreement which was posed during the Versailles Peace Treaty of 1919. So another or the last long-term cause was German invasion of Poland and the Czechoslovakia. It means that Germany invaded Poland and the Czechoslovakia, which was the nations under the Allied power of Britain, France, USSR, and USA. So after the invasion of those nations, which were supported by the Allied power, led to the enmity and those Allied power to declare the war towards Germany, and that's the occurrence of the Second World War. After looking the long-term causes of Second World War, let us see the impact of the Second World War on Africa. The first one was increase of exploitation in Africa. It means after the Second World War, the exploitation of African families or society were intensified, because the economies of the European or most European nations were affected, because they used or they invested much funds on war, and that's why in other economic projects or economic activities were no end fund which was directed there. So that led to the exploitation of Africans in order to revamp the affected economies by the Second World War. Like you can see that the industries in Europe, the infrastructures like roads, railway, ports, and the airports were destructed by the war, because there were military weapons which were dangerous and affected those economic projects in Europe. So those Europeans, when they come in Africa, they intensively exploited the African people. Another impact led to the introduction of cash crops production. It means that the Europeans, when they came in Africa, they intensified the production of cash crops so that they can get the abundant enough raw materials which will be exported from Africa to European nations' industries in order to produce iron. They will be returning those goods or manufactured goods from their industries back to Africa and sells them at the high price. As the result, they will increase the economic growth of the economies which have been affected by the Second World War. But another impact of the Second World War on Africa was it contributed to the rise of idea of nationalism among the Africans. It means that the Second World War was intensified the consciousness and the awareness among the Africans, when the Africans witnessed that the white people are even die when they are shot by the gun. So those Africans got the conscious and the awareness that even them they can be able to fight the colonial masters and push them out from their nations and to live their freedom which have been lost at the previous time. So the soldiers who were survived of the war led to the spread of conscious and awareness and the nationalism ideas on their fellow Africans, in order to mobilize themselves and to join together to wage the nationalistic movement against the colonial masters. And that's why some African countries after the Second World War in 1960 started to get their freedom or independence because of the impact of the Second World War. But another impact, it led to the rise of USA and USSR. We have to know that the rise or the emergence of USA and the USSR after the Second World War contributed much on the development of Africa, because those nations, USA or United States of America and the United Soviet Socialist Republic, was contributed much in moral and material support to the African nations in struggling for their lost independence toward the colonial masters. So you can see USA was supporting the nations which were supporting the capitalist ideology. On the other hand, USSR or Soviet Socialist Republic was supporting the nations or African nations which were supporting the socialism ideology. So the role played by those nations led to the increase of nationalism ideas among the African nations, and that's why the main fall of African economy. It means that the economy of Africa was felt because even African nations was participated fully in the Second World War, whereby the colonial masters were taking up their people from their colonies to be the soldiers in the war, and they are supposed to fight for their colonial masters. So the African societies remained with no labor or with no productive laborers, whereby the youth were taken as soldiers to fight in the war, and those people were died during the war, and thus the economy of Africa was felt or collapsed because there were no production, because those people or productive people were taken, and the African society remained with elders and the children as well as women who cannot produce at a large quantity as the youth who were taken to the war by their colonial masters. But the last one was the population of African people. It means that the people who were taken to fight in the war on behalf of their colonial masters were led to the separation of families, and the population of African societies were decreased because many of youths were taken as the soldiers by the colonial masters to fight in the war, and that led to the decrease of population in African societies. So this was the impact of the Second World War, and this is the end of our topic, or the first topic in Form 4, which is the crisis in the capitalist system. So after looking that topic, I would like to give you an exercise which has the 3 questions. The first one, it is show how USA and USSR led to the nationalism in Africa. The second one, assess the impact of Second World War in Europe. And the third one, explain the causes of Second World War, regardless long-term cause or short-term cause. So our exercise is comprised by 3 questions, which the first one show how USA and the USSR led to the nationalism in Africa. The second one assess the impact of the Second World War in Europe and explain the causes of Second World War. And the third question. So until there, this is the end of our lesson and it's the end of our topic. So thank you for being with me or being together, after being together in the beginning of the topic and at the ending of the topic. So proceed with that cooperation, and I welcome you to proceed with the next topic and next lesson. So